Astrid, tell me a little bit about what Resource Africa does. Where do you work, and very basically, what is it you do?
Resource Africa UK is a very small organisation. It's actually a UK charity, but we are active in Southern and Eastern Africa. And we're working on community-based adaptation. So looking at participatory ways, inclusive ways of engaging communities in Namibia, Tanzania, Kenya, South Africa. And looking at communication strategies to take their strategies, their knowledge, their challenges up to a national policy-making level.
Right. I mean, how do you do that? Because presumably there is a big gap between the local farmer in a remote part of Tanzania, say, and the work that you're doing, perhaps in an office, meetings like this one in Durban. How do you bridge that gap?
And that's exactly where we wanted to position ourselves, is to, in a way, be the translator between what is going on up here and what is actually happening on climate change at the very local level for the communities that are the most vulnerable and where we're absolutely most affected. And it's not as difficult as one could believe, because a lot of the strategies, a lot of the information should really come from the communities and are very, very relevant to these policy-making negotiations. So being somewhere in between and using some strategies that are very inclusive and very participatory, such as educational film, such as theatre, working with the photography, for example, and reaching out to networks via websites or lists, or just to spreading the issues from local level to policy-making levels.
And does information from some of these communities, information which has often been in the community for generations, does it feed its way back through organisations like yours into the meeting halls at places like this?
That's exactly what we're trying really to work on. How do you do that? How do you make sure it's relevant? Before you can do that, you obviously also have to work with communities and local community-based organizations on why is climate change relevant to them? How does it link to existing challenges and issues on the ground? And how to make sure that, first of all, that there's an understanding of this very complex and abstract concept of climate change for the communities, and how to make sure that this very broad perspective and understanding of adaptation and climate change, that is also being understood by the governments.
Presumably what's bringing it home to them are the changes that they see year by year in climate change, the flooding and the like. So is that helping in your work? No, ironically, is that kind of helping your work one way or the other?
Helping that they're seeing that. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing what kind of information is out there. You can talk to communities and they can give you a timeline of weather events, on what's really going on, what are the typical patterns, for example, drought patterns or flooding patterns that are already existing. That's got nothing actually to do with climate change as we see it today, but just realizing, getting a timeline, what's been happening for the last 10 years, and you really see the changes, or you hear about the changes, and then can make it relevant to them and saying, these changes happen because, and then trying to explain what climate change is, and then starting to realize it together with the community. What is your knowledge? How have you dealt with it? How have you coped with this before? Talking to the elders in the community who's got very long experience and great experience on how to deal with some of these natural disasters.
Are you confident that with a combination of your expertise, of the knowledge that comes to you from these communities, that one way or the other the message is getting through both to the people on the ground and to the people making the decisions at places like this?
I am somehow confident. I think there's a bigger and bigger interest for each year, and you can see that for these conferences, that there's a big difference this year than compared to maybe 3 years ago during these COPs. What is really happening, what issues are actually being discussed and emphasized. And I think this year adaptation has got quite a focus, and not just within the negotiations but also within civil society, these kind of venues and side events that are being organized.